welcome back to Be Reasonable. Today on the podcast, we will discuss whether or not we should have the Electoral College and packing the Supreme Court. Joining us today is John and Fisher. Hello and welcome to both of you.
Hola, good to be here.
First, we're going to start with the Electoral College. This is an important topic as it determines who the president will be. That's important because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter who wins the popular vote, but who wins the Electoral College by 270 votes. Someone losing the popular vote but winning the Electoral College has only happened 5 times in American history, one of them being the last presidential cycle in 2016 when Secretary Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 3 million votes, lost the Electoral College by about 80 electoral votes. Originally, one of the reasons that the Electoral College was created was to keep uneducated voters from controlling who becomes president, and some have argued that the reason is now irrelevant because of all the modern technology and news that is now available. Fisher, what do you think of the Electoral College? Do you think it is outdated?
No bueno, or no me gusta nada, Electoral College. I think it's definitely outdated. The system of the Electoral College, first, the really dumb thing is the electors, right? Like that the votes don't actually go to who you vote for. It's these electors that each state has. Like Texas will have 41 electoral votes, and they get 41 electors. And those people aren't mandated to vote how the people voted. So that's the first dumb element of it. And then second, this idea that the will of the people doesn't matter is really bad. So people are like, oh, America's a republic, not a democracy. But the distinction, it's a democracy. It's people vote for the leader, and that's how it should be. You should have the people deciding what they want. And I think Republicans just favor the Electoral College because it favors them, in terms of winning, although that may flip in 2024, with Texas moving and all that. So I don't know. I just think it's a inherently ignorant system that doesn't accept the will of the people.
John, what do you think about this?
Well, you mentioned electors deciding who's president, not the actual people, and I'd say to that I think it's good that the electors decide who's going to be president. Because the Supreme Court rules on it and said whatever the states say, they have to either be faithful or non-faithful. So, but we have a system to which if something bad were to happen to a president like Joe Biden and something really needed to change, the electors could decide to change the outcome of the election. Highly unlikely, however, it does allow for stuff to be saved like that. So that way we don't have a non qualified president at leading the most powerful nation in the world. You also said that I'm just thinking about the points that you made. You said that it's
undemocratic.
That Republicans favor. Yeah, undemocratic. Sorry. So undemocratic. My answer to that is that we're a constitutional republic. We're not a direct or not direct. We're not a democracy per se. We're similar to democracy, however, more of.
What does that mean though? How is the Electoral College more of a republic? How?
More of a republic. Well,
how does the Electoral College make it more like a constitutional republic, less like a democracy?
Well, I'd say that it's not. Well, I mean, it's not like a direct. I mean, your argument was that we should be a democracy, and not every vote is equal in the Electoral College, and I'd say that not every vote has to be equal. Because we're not necessarily democracy.
But why do you think what is it? Is it better that some votes are worth more than others? How does it? The idea of why should a leader be elected? What do you want? What do you want in that process? Do you want the people involved, or do you want a system that favors Texans and Pennsylvanians? Because that's what the Electoral College does. It's a democracy for Pennsylvania and Texas and Georgia, and it's just a dictatorship for those other states.
Well, not necessarily. I'd say that swing states change all the time. 20 years ago, it was completely different states, including Illinois being a toss-up. And, Reagan won California, even though it's heavily Democratic.
That's a fair point that the swing states change, but why shouldn't every state be a swing state? One of the points people talk about is important in a democracy is having the candidates visit everywhere, right? And I think if you had a popular vote system, the candidates would. It would bias towards more populous areas, definitely, because no one's going to visit some town in North Dakota. But all the big states with the most people would get visited. I mean, the candidates would visit more people, to try and turn out vote wherever they could.
Right. Yeah. No, I actually disagree with that. I think that the popular vote, if we did a popular vote, then the candidates would basically just go to cities and mostly just populous areas. However, I'd say that there's quite a bit of campaigning in the whereabouts in the United States because of
But like
the
it's
Electoral
only in the
College.
swing states. No, they don't campaign anywhere else except for like fundraising.
Well, Trump campaigned in a ton of areas that he campaigned in California, I think, back in 2016. So to say that they don't campaign in these areas that are safe or like close to safe or whatever the term is,
But if you're
I
looking to
think
run a
is
smart
inaccurate.
campaign, you're going to hit the swing states again and again and again. It doesn't make sense to hit the non-swing states. And so I just think you want to have a system where it favors. No system is perfect, right? You can't have a system where every candidate's trying to visit everyone equally. But I think the popular vote is fair in terms of everyone's vote being equal. I don't get why that's not a good thing. I don't get why people don't say every vote should be equal, and that's great. Why should it not be that way? And then the Electoral College also makes like Wyoming and North Dakota have like huge political power compared to like Texas and Georgia and California.
Will you make the argument that like small states have more, need like less people
Mm-hmm.
for every electoral vote or something like that? And I'd say that those aren't the states that decide the election. It's like states like Texas
Oh,
and Florida and Ohio and bigger
definitely. But
states.
even if it doesn't decide the election, they still have more of an impact. Like Wyoming with like 400,000 people has like
Mm-hmm.
three, and that's like, for California, it's like you need like 700,000 to have one. So it's just like hugely more powerful in terms of what their vote matters. I think it's like 3 times as powerful or something like that. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's way more powerful in these smaller states with tiny populations.
Yeah, however, these smaller states don't, hardly decide the elections. Back in 2016, if you gave every state that was equal to 3 or 4 electoral votes to Hillary Clinton, Trump still wins. So, this unequal, unproportional system still, Trump still wins, even though it's,
I
may
get the
not be
argument that
completely
it
fair.
doesn't make an impact, but even if it doesn't make an impact, shouldn't you still fix the system? Like even if, and there's going to be elections that come down to like 269 to 271 or 268 to 271, right? Like they were talking about this year that could have happened. If a few states would have gone a different way, that it could have been at that thing. And so those electors definitely matter. And like if you replaced it more proportionally, that would have actually helped Trump in this election because he lost some of the states. So I don't know. I just think it's fair to everyone if you have a popular vote system, basically an electoral college proportionate system type of thing, where you just the person who wins the will the people wins. Because don't you want the person? Isn't it good for a democracy that the person the people want wins? Because doesn't that create internal chaos and problems if you have a person who the majority of people don't want in there getting elected?
Well, no, not necessarily. Again, we're a constitutional republic, and this was one of the compromises back when the founding fathers decided, upon like how to elect leaders. And because it's in the Constitution, I think that regardless of it being like, every vote, counts as, equal, or, it not being that, it's still, how we elect our
But we
leader. And I
can
think it
change
should
the
stay that way.
Constitution. They intentionally put an option to change it in there.
Yeah, no, I understand that they put a change in there. However, I think the founding fathers did this for a reason. I think that reason was correct. So that way, the overarching majority doesn't decide, everything against the minority. And so that way there's there's different ways for the minority to actually have their voice spoken. And I think that's shown in the filibuster, which is also important. And I think that's shown in, 2 different Congresses that are elected in different ways. So that way, not one party
Yeah, I
rules
look at
over
like
another
you're right. The
completely.
Senate's very like sort of undemocratic, and then the House is more democratic in terms of like how the people are elected. I shared a beat, but I'm just gonna keep going. And so I think that's your balance there in the Senate versus the House. I don't think you should have 2 chambers of Congress or two branches of government where the will of the people can be ignored. I think you should have some systems where you're right. You have to have a balance of power, and you can't have it where the majority can instantly do everything. Whatever measures need to be. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I think. Oh, sorry. I think that's the genius of our Constitution. Scalia brought this up, and the fact that we have a bilateral or congressional Congress, bi-chamber, whatever, two different houses of government of Congress deciding the legislation is genius, elected in 2 different fashions. Because now we don't have one party ruling it over, and Scalia looked at it as like it's extremely hard for one party to pass something without the influence or without the without it being supported by the other party. And I think that's huge to stop over legislation. And Alexander Hamilton wrote about this in the Federalist Papers that, it's good that, we have a constitution set up with, major balance and
Yeah,
checks and
but
power and stuff like
it's
that.
still like parties still win overwhelming control of power. Like sometimes like it's not a system where it makes it inherently hard for the winner to win again. It's a system where you can win huge. Like the Democrats used to win big in some of the rural states, and then they won the House. When Obama got elected. And so that favored them, and they were able to have
Mm-hmm.
the majority there. So I don't know. I think it's become so partisan in all of this, and it's
Oh yeah, I agree. The partisan is really bad. However, I don't think that affects the Constitution or who's well. I mean, it affects who's president, of course. But I don't see how this changes the how the Constitution was set up. And part of this electoral college is if you want to like pass all the legislation that your party wants to, they have to win like a really big majority. Throughout every state and just every town. So that way we don't have one party that gets like 51% wins by 51% and decides
yeah, but
everything for
doesn't it
everyone.
is you're trying to hold like the democracy republic together, right? Like you're trying to hold it together. And if you have a system where the will of the people is consistently being ignored, doesn't that sort of create the right climate for the system to implode on itself? If again and again the people feel like their vote doesn't matter, because in the without a popular vote system, it really doesn't, unless you live in Pennsylvania, California, Pennsylvania, Florida, or whatever the next swing states are going to be. Where 90% of the time you're not in that swing state rotation.
Well, I think that I was going to make a point. Oh yeah, that I don't think the will of the people is being ignored here. I thought it happened more times, but the constitutional winner that didn't get the popular vote is only what happened 5 times in the past, and that's a lot less than
But
I
why
thought
does
it.
that matter if the system
To say
allows
that
it
the will of the
anyway?
people is being ignored, I think is inaccurate. I'm sorry.
Wait, sorry, you cut out, John. Matthew, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna mark this because I'm gonna cut it.
Okay.
24 minutes. John, you here?
Yeah, here.
All right. So if you can go back to your point that you just made, you cut out.
Oh, did I cut out?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
all right.
wait a
So
second, then continue your point. Continue your point.
yeah, no problem. So to say that the will of the people is being ignored, I think is inaccurate. We've only had a constitutional winner that didn't win the popular vote, 5 times in the past, as Matthew said. I thought it'd be more than that to actually make a real point that the will of the people is being ignored. I agree that the will of the people is being more like ignored with like gerrymandering and stuff like that. However, a constitutional, the way we elect the president, still listens to the people more than it does in dictators or stuff like that. So I'd say our system works pretty well compared to how you bring
Yeah,
it
but
out to
if you
be.
look at I don't know, I think Canada has like a just like most countries do like a popular vote system. Do you think that system's worse? But like, what reasons would you say it's worse? What reasons do you say the popular vote system is worse for the people and for everyone? I mean, because in the presidency, it's not like a thing where like it's Congress where you need to have like a balance and a certain amount of seats. If you either win the presidency or don't win it, so there's no like your argument of like you need the balance of power doesn't really apply there because you either win it or you don't win it.
Well, if you win it or you don't win it, then you have the power and the
But you can't
balance
have
with it.
balance in the
So
presidency. The presidency is inherently one party controls it completely.
well, yeah, but there's balance in the Congress, and so the presidency, Donald Trump may have lost this election. However, Republicans are still looking to take the Senate, and so there's different congressional majorities, and that allows for the balance
No,
of
but my
power.
question is, why is a electoral system better than a popular vote system for everyone? Like, how does it help it? How does it help it? Because the argument of you need the breakup of power doesn't really apply for the presidency. One party wins the presidency, they have complete power over it. So, what would be another argument to say that the electoral college is better than the popular vote? Then it's better than like a Canadian system or whatever.
Well, I don't think your argument, irrationalizes my argument of a majority being completely dominant over a minority. Yeah, because again, the majority has been represented. However, if that majority wins like all seats and wins the presidency and is like huge and it continues that way, I think it's good that we have another way for the
Through the
minority
Electoral
to win
College.
the presidency.
So,
Yeah,
but why should the minority be able to win? You know,
well, so that way they're not oppressed by the
but
majority.
but
One
then
could
what is
say.
the point of the democracy if the minority can win? What if because then it's basically just a coin flip where you're choosing who gets power.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a coin flip, but again, we're not a democracy, and so it shouldn't be like all the democracy or the majority should win. Um, so.
So before you guys continue, I want to mention, John, you mentioned earlier the Alexander Hamilton. He
Yeah.
also talked about the Electoral College, and he said, if not perfect, it is at least excellent, because it ensured that the office of president will never fall to a lot of a man who is not in an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. So, Fisher, do you agree with that, or what do you think of that? What do you think of what he said?
So he's sort of talking about the electors there, like, right, that the electors are a barrier. But the electors have sort of just become like pawns. Like I think a lot of states mandate that they have to go with the will of the people, and then most of the time they do. So we could just strip out the electors altogether because they basically are at this point. So if the electors actually held power, it's an interesting argument. But the electors are appointed by party officials, so they're like inherently partisan. It's not like a judge or something, like an appointed judge, or like an unelected judge, like where they have like some nonpartisanship. It's party members for whichever side wins it. So like if a Democrat wins a state, the Democratic Party members have an inherent bias towards them. So I think the electors are useless. If they were actually had power to change the result of the election, I think they'd be useless and partisanly skewed anyway. And now they don't have any power, so it's just a useless system.
However, although they can change the results of the election, and some states may mandate it, they are allowed to freely, they usually go with whatever the Electoral College says they should go with. So to say that they don't represent an important role in our Electoral College, I think is a little not misleading, but inaccurate. I'd say that they're an important part, and they're just like the middleman. I see them as they usually choose the winner. However, if something like really bad were to happen, we have a system which would allow the electors to choose someone else to be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, but
and I think that's a good thing.
But the electors have never stopped anything terrible. Like the electors didn't stop like the post-slavery like oppression that happened under those presidents. They didn't stop. I forget the president after Lincoln who did all that like bad with slavery and like the Reconstruction. So they didn't stop any of that.
Mm-hmm.
They've never had like a moment where the electors stopped something that was bad that was going to happen, because.
Well, no, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, and then the thing is like, well, what are they supposed to stop? Bad policy? Well, you can't just say that policy is bad. We're going to stop it. There's good and bad policy all the time.
No, they're supposed to stop. I see it as they're supposed to stop like ineligible.
What do you mean by
leaders.
ineligible?
Like people who people who like mentally or physically cannot carry out their duties as president of the United States.
I don't know.
So not like policy.
I would trust the people more with that.
They're the middleman. If we took them out, it'd be fine. However, they allow for other options to be had. And some states do mandate that they vote, with the people, and that they have 100% of the time in the past done that.
Yeah, what's interesting with that is there's this Navajo Intercopo thing, where it's the idea is that they're trying to make the U.S. a popular vote system, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a majority of the electors or the.
Oh yeah, did you watch that
CGP
Grey video or whatever?
Yeah, not sponsored, but
I thought it was
sponsored by CGP Grey.
So, Fisher, you've throughout this whole you don't. I can tell you don't like it.
No, why
The
not?
Electoral College. So, what do you think your opinion would change if they changed the winner takes all? If they changed it from winner takes all to, like in Maine, where they have some electoral votes going to different candidates depending on the vote.
So those systems are based on, I think, congressional districts, and I think that would be a disaster because, as John mentioned earlier, all the gerrymandering that goes on, and if you have the electoral votes, based on the gerrymandered districts, it not only creates more of an incentive to gerrymander, it means the election itself is gerrymandered, right? Where both sides do the gerrymandering, and they're very, very good at it. You can have a slim majority and win a huge amount of power if you gerrymander. So it would be awful if you went to the system based on like the House seats. Like I know that's how Nebraska does it. I don't know. I think that's how Maine does it too. I think it's based on the House seats in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
But Maine may have a different system.
John, do you think winner takes all should be changed?
Yeah,
Or do you think we should...
I think it's good that winner takes all.
Like a proportionate system would be interesting. I think that would be better if you had a system where, because then more votes would count. I think a proportionate system would be pretty good. But it was just based on math. You just said they got 40% of the vote, they get 40% of the electoral votes. Now, how do you round that? I don't know. Maybe then it comes into play where you do want to have, maybe you can have fractions of an electoral vote because that would be the most accurate. So I think you can maybe have a system like that, but then that's basically just a popular vote system, because then like you look at like Republicans in California and Democrats in, I guess, where should I go? Idaho. They don't have a reason to turn out to vote, right? And that's not good if people are disincentivized to vote because their vote doesn't matter. That's the stuff of a dictatorship, right? Where people don't turn out to vote because their vote doesn't matter.
No, I don't think that's a step of dictatorship. I think that's just personal, opinion. But both candidates have said, go out and vote. They're not saying, go out and vote for me. They're just saying go out and vote. And many places are saying, use your, constitutional right to vote. So I think pretty much everyone agrees that you should vote, and I think that there's huge support for people voting, although the candidates may be poor or bad.
Yeah, but like
I think that's it. Okay, go ahead.
In like a specific state, in a swing state of the Electoral College, even if you're in a very Republican county, it still matters, right? So people will vote, or very Democratic county, people still vote because it really matters. You add to just the total, right? So it's good for a democracy when you have high turnout, right? Low turnout's bad. That means people aren't interested in the democracy. People don't care about it. So if you would have higher turnout if people realize their vote matters wherever they are, right? In California, where you have all those Republicans who think their vote doesn't matter, if they turned out, that would be good because you got more people in the process, because they knew that the more they turn out, the higher percentage of electors they get. Or just in terms of popular vote, the more votes they get.
Yeah, I think that high voter turnout is good. However, I don't see it it may be a little bit suppressed by the our the way we elect our leaders. However, I don't see it as like a huge suppressing thing. And like I said before, both candidates want everyone to vote regardless of where you are. So my parents voted for Trump even though they're in oh wow, big surprise, even though they're in Illinois here. So
yeah. And I mean, there's a really competitive House district too. In our district. So I think there's so much that's wrong. Like with the House, it's so gerrymandered. With the Senate, it's so undemocratic. And then with the presidency, it can ignore the will of the people. I think we need to restructure it. I think you need to move power away from the Senate. I think you need to move the House to a proportional representation system. As a CGP grade, the percentage of vote your party wins, that's how many seats they get. And then move towards a populist vote with the presidency.
John, put in your last comment, and then we're going to go to the break.
Yeah, that would be more democratically system. I think that the fact that we don't have the majority oppressing the minority is good, and I think that we have a Senate that's not based on the same elections as the House is, allows for there to be deadlock, and more deadlock is less legislation, which is good. And so I think that our Constitution sets up our government like none other, and I think that's a good thing.